Hello, sweet listening squirrels. I'm glad I read a whole chapter the other day because I did it again. I'm so sorry I didn't read yesterday. We'll see how long 13 is and how long I can go. I do have my Pepsi on the floor. I know it should be water. Chapter 13 is called Both Sides. Steve's engagement made a great stir in the family, a pleasant one this time, for nobody objected. Everything seemed felicitous. I think that's it. And the course of true love ran very smoothly for the young couple, who promised to remove the only obstacle to their union by growing old and wise as soon as possible. If he had not been so genuinely happy, the little lover's airs would have been unbearable, for he patronized all mankind in general, his brother and elder cousins in particular. Now that's the way to manage matters, he declared, standing before the fire in Aunt Clara's billiard room a day or two after the ball, with his hands behind his back. No nonsense, no delay, no domestic rows or tragic separations. Just choose with taste and judgment. Make yourself agreeable through thick and thin, and when it's perfectly evident that the dear creature adores the ground you walk on, say the word like a man, and there you are. All very easy to do that with a girl like Kitty, who has no confounded notions to spoil her and trip you up every time you don't exactly toe the mark, muttered Charlie, knocking the balls about as if it were a relief to hit something, for he was in a gloriously bad humor that evening, because time hung heavy on his hands since he had forsworn the company he could not keep without danger to himself. You should humor those little notions, for all women have them, and it needs tact to steer clear of them. Kitty's got dozens, but I treat them with respect. Have my own way when I can, give in without growling when I can't, and we get on like a couple of spoons, put in Charlie, who felt that he had not steered clear, and so suffered shipwreck in sight of land. Steve meant to have said doves, but his cousin's levity caused him to add with calm dignity, reasonable beings, and then revenged himself by making a good shot, which won him the game. You always were a lucky little dog, Steve. I don't begrudge you a particle of your happiness, but it does seem as if things weren't quite fair sometimes, said Archie, suppressing an envious sigh, for though he seldom complained, it was impossible to contrast his own and his cousin's prospects with perfect equanimity. His worth shines forth the brightest who in hope always confides, the abject soul despairs, observed Mac, quoting Euripides in a conversational tone as he lay upon a divan, reposing after a hard day's work. Thank you, said Archie, brightening a little, for a hopeful word from any source was very comfortable. That's your favorite Rip, isn't it? He was a wise old boy, but you could find advice as good as that nearer home, put in Steve, who just then felt equal to slapping Plato on the shoulder, so elated was he at being engaged first of all the lot, as he gracefully expressed it. Don't halloo till you're out of the wood, Dandy. Mrs. Kit has jilted 2 boys, and May a 3rd, so you'd better not brag of your wisdom too soon, for she may make a fool of you yet, said Charlie, cynically, his views of life being very gloomy about this time. No, she won't, Steve. If you do your part honestly, there's the making of a good little woman in Kitty, and she has proved it by taking you instead of those other fellas. You're not Solomon, but you're not spoilt yet, and she had the sense to see it, said Mac encouragingly from his corner, for he and his brother were better friends than even since the little scene at the Van Tassels. Hear, hear, cried Steve, looking more than ever like a cheerful young cockerel trying to crow as he stood upon the hearth rug with his hands under his coat-tails, rising and falling alternately upon the toes and heels of his neat little boots. "Come, you've given them each a pat on the head. Haven't you got one for me? I need it enough, for if ever there was a poor devil born under an evil star, it is C.C. Campbell," exclaimed Charlie, leaning his chin on his cue with a discontented expression of countenance. For trying to be good is often very hard work till one gets used to it. "Oh, yes, I can accommodate you," and as if his words suggested the selection, Mac, still lying flat upon his back, repeated one of his favorite bits from Beaumont and Fletcher, for he had a wonderful memory, could reel off poetry by the hour together. "Man is his own star, and the soul that can render an honest and perfect man. Commands all light, all influence, all fate. Nothing to him falls early or too late. Our acts are our angels are, or good or ill, our fatal shadows that walk by us still." "Confoundedly bad angels they are too," muttered Charlie ruefully, remembering the one that undid him. His cousins never knew exactly what occurred on New Year's night, but suspected that something was amiss, for Charlie had the blues, and Rose, though as kind as ever, expressed no surprise at his long absences. They had all observed and wondered at his state of things, yet discreetly made no remark till Steve, who was as inquisitive as a magpie, seized this opportunity to say in a friendly tone, which showed he bore no malice for the dark prophecy regarding his Kitty's faithfulness, "What's the trouble, Prince? You're so seldom in a bad humor that we don't know what to make of it, and I'll feel out of spirits when you have the blues. Had a tiff with Rose?" "Never you mind, little boy, but this I will say, the better women are, the more reasonable they are. They don't require us to be saints like themselves, which is lucky, but they do expect us to render an honest and perfect man sometimes, and that's asking rather too much in a fallen world like this," said Charlie, glad to get a little sympathy, though he had no intention of confessing his transgressions. "No, it isn't," said Mac decidedly. "Much you know about it," began Charlie, ill-pleased to be so flatly contradicted. "Well, I know this much," added Mac, suddenly sitting up with his hair in a highly disheveled condition. "It's very unreasonable in us to ask women to be saints and then expect them to feel honored when we offer them our damaged hearts, or at best, one not half as good as theirs. If they weren't blinded by love, they'd see what a mean advantage we take of them and not make such bad bargains." "Upon my word, the philosopher's coming out strong upon the subject. We shall have him preaching women's rights directly," said Steve, much amused at this outburst. "I've begun, you see, and much good may it do you," answered Mac, laying himself placidly down again. "Well, but look here, man, you're arguing on the wrong side," put in Archie, quite agreeing with him, but feeling he must stand by his order at all costs. "Never mind sides, uphold the right wherever you find it. You needn't stare, Steve. I told you I was going to look into this matter, and I am. You think I'm wrapped up in books, but I see a great deal more of what's going on around me than you imagine. And I'm getting on in this new branch, let me tell you, quite as fast as is good for me, I dare say." "Going in for perfection, are you?" asked Charlie, both amused and interested, for he respected Mac more than he owned, even to himself, though he never alluded to the timely warning, neither forgot. "Yes, I think of it. How will you begin?" "Do my best all round, keep good company, read good books, love good things, and cultivate soul and body as faithfully and wisely as I can." "And you expect to succeed, do you?" "Please God, I will." The quiet energy of Mac's last words produced a momentary silence. Charlie thoughtfully studied the carpet Archie, who had been absently poking the fire, looked over at Mac as if he thanked him again, and Steve, forgetting his self-conceit, began to wonder if it was time for David's Topic Tuesday. And I'll be going over there as soon as I get done with this reading today. Poking the fire, looked over at Mac as if he thanked him again, and Steve, forgetting his self-conceit, began to wonder if it was not possible to improve himself a little for Kitty's sake. Only a minute, for young men do not give much time to thoughts of this kind, even when love stirs up the noblest impulses within them. To act rather than to talk is more natural to most of them, as Charlie's next question showed, for having the matter much at heart, he ventured to ask in an offhand way as he laughed and twirled his cue, "Do you intend to reach the highest point of perfection before you address one of the fair saints? Or shall you ask her to lend a hand somewhere short of that? As it takes a long lifetime to do what I planned, I think I shall ask some good woman to lend a hand when I've got anything worth offering her. Not a saint, for I never shall be one myself, but a gentle creature who will help me, as I shall try to help her, so that we can go on together and finish our work afterward, if we haven't time to do it here." If Mac had been a lover, he would not have discussed the subject in this simple and sincere fashion, though he might have felt it more deeply. But being quite heart-free, he frankly showed his interest, and curiously enough, out of his wise young head, unconsciously gave the three lovers before him counsel, which they valued because he practiced what he preached. "Well, I hope you'll find her," said Charlie heartily as he went back to his game. "I think I shall," and while the others played, Mac lay staring at the window curtains as contentedly as if, through it, beheld a dream of fair women from which to choose his future mate. A few days after this talk in the billiard room, Kitty went to call upon Rose, for as she was about to enter the family, she felt it her duty to become acquainted with all its branches. This branch, however, she cultivated more assiduously than any other, and was continually running in to confer with Cousin Rose, whom she considered the wisest, dearest, kindest girl ever created. And Rose, finding that, in spite of her flighty head, Kitty had a good heart for her own, did her best to encourage all the new hopes and aspirations springing up in it, under the warmth of the first genuine affection she had ever known. "My dear, I want to have some serious conversation with you upon the subject in which I take an interest for the first time in my life," began Kitty, seating herself and pulling off her gloves, as if the subject was one which needed a firm grasp. "Tell away, and don't mind if I go on working, as I want to finish this job today," answered Rose, with a long-handled paintbrush in her hand and a great pair of shears at her side. "You're always so busy. What is it now? Let me help. I can talk faster when I'm doing something," which seemed hardly possible, for Kitty's tongue went like a mill clapper at all hours. "Making picture books for my sick babies at the hospital. Pretty work, isn't it? You cut it out, and I'll paste them on the squares of gay cambric. Then we just tie up a few pages with a ribbon, and there's a nice, light, durable book for the poor dears to look at as they lie in their beds." "A capital idea. Do you go there often? However, do you find the time for such things?" asked Kitty, busily cutting from a big sheet the touching picture of a parent bird with a red head and a blue tail offering what looked like a small boa constrictor to one of its nestlings. A fat young squab with a green head, yellow tail, and no tail at all. And that's 15 minutes. I'm going to stop right there. I have no idea how long this chapter is. But we'll continue it tomorrow. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Not on live today, but I'll see you in the YouTube streets. I'm heading to David's. See ya. Bye-bye.